Claudia Lawrence is a confident woman who has her life firmly under control. She has a good job that she enjoys, her own house, and a stable circle of friends. But Claudia also has other acquaintances that not even her own family knows about. And it may be one of these acquaintances that ultimately costs her her life. Claudia works as a chef on the campus of the University of York's Goodricke College. She's responsible for the university cafeteria and takes care of the students' physical well-being every day. She previously attended catering college and was privately educated at a girls' school. Claudia's father is a wealthy lawyer. Her mother is a city councillor and, at times, also mayor of Malton, England. After completing her culinary training at college, Claudia worked in several hotels and restaurants in York, England. In 2006, she got a job in the university cafeteria. She was 32 years old at the time and had her life firmly under control. Although Claudia didn't have a steady boyfriend, she had no shortage of male company. Her family didn't know exactly who she was seeing, but Claudia always had men around. She simply enjoyed being single and meeting new people, even if she's not in a committed relationship with anyone. However, this doesn't necessarily apply to her short-term partners. Some of the men Claudia has relationships with are also married or have girlfriends. In addition to the university cafeteria, the main hub of Claudia's life is a pub. In 2007, she moves to York Heworth and becomes a regular at the Next Head pub. As is customary in England, Claudia often goes there after work and makes a few acquaintances. The pub is located on Heworth Road, the same street as the small cottage Claudia moves into in March 2007. So it's only natural that she stops by the Next Head from time to time after work. Claudia usually drives to work at the university, but in March 2009, her car is in the shop. So Claudia walks to work. This takes about 45 minutes, which is considerably longer than the 10-minute drive. But as a temporary solution, this is not a problem for Claudia. It just means she gets a long walk twice a day. On March 18, 2009, Claudia finishes her shift at the university cafeteria at around 2:30 p.m. She is lucky that day. A friend gives her a ride and drops her off at her cottage on Heworth Road. Claudia is therefore home by 2:50 p.m. and has the afternoon off. At around 3:05 p.m., Claudia is seen again by a friend as she arrives home. However, there is a witness who claims to have seen Claudia sometime between 2:50 p.m. and 3:05 p.m. as she posted a letter in a mailbox. Claudia was probably dropped off by her ride, went out again to post a letter, and then came home a second time shortly after 3 p.m. It is not known who the letter was addressed to or what was in the envelope. We also do not know exactly what Claudia did that afternoon. We only know that she sent a text message to a friend at around 8 p.m. and spoke to her mother on the phone half an hour later. Claudia and her parents keep in regular contact via cell phone. Claudia's mother doesn't notice anything unusual about her that day. Her daughter seems as exuberant and cheerful as ever. However, she keeps the conversation short because Claudia says she wants to go to bed early. Her alarm clock would ring at around 5 a.m. the next morning so that she could get to work on time. At 9:12 p.m., another text message arrives on Claudia's cell phone from an acquaintance. It will be the last text message Claudia ever receives. It is unclear whether she read it. Claudia Lawrence will never reply. The next morning, March 19, 2009, Claudia's colleagues wait for her in the university cafeteria kitchen. In vain. Although she is usually reliable, the 35-year-old simply does not show up. Claudia's boss tries to call her, but her cell phone is turned off. Later, it will be discovered that Claudia's cell phone was turned off at 12:08 a.m. the night before. Claudia is supposed to meet her friend Susie at a pub on the evening of March 19th. However, Claudia doesn't show up for this meeting, just as she didn't show up for work that morning. Susie is very worried and therefore contacts Claudia's parents on March 20th. When they are also unable to reach their daughter, they immediately report Claudia Lawrence missing to the police. They realize that something terrible must have happened. Claudia is usually always reachable by cell phone, and she is absolutely not the type to stand someone up or just disappear like that. In the afternoon, Claudia's father arrives in York and meets with police officers. Together, they go to Claudia's cottage and look around. When they find Claudia's small house empty, Claudia's father is relieved at first. He had feared that, in the worst case, he would find his daughter unconscious in some kind of emergency situation. Instead, Claudia is simply not there. There are no signs of a break-in or struggle, which initially reassures the investigators. It looks as if Claudia left her house voluntarily. Her bed is made, breakfast dishes are in the sink, and her electric toothbrush is on the dish rack in the kitchen. 3 items are missing from Claudia's house: her cell phone, a hair straightener, and her backpack, which Claudia takes to work every day. Otherwise, nothing is missing. Her handbag with her wallet, papers, and bank cards is in the house. You may be wondering about the missing hair straightener. In fact, Claudia often takes it with her. She also always takes her cell phone and backpack with her when she goes to work. Based on the missing items, it looks as if she left for work at the university as usual on March 19th. This is consistent with the fact that there are people who may have seen Claudia tomorrow. A couple noticed a cyclist on the Melrose Gate Bridge. That was around 5:35 a.m. They seemed to be having a heated conversation, perhaps even arguing. At around 6:05 a.m., 5 minutes after Claudia's shift began, a witness saw a couple standing in a car in front of the university. Here, too, it looked as if the man and woman had been arguing. Both the cyclist and the second witness described the man as thin, about 1.70 meters tall, and wearing a black hoodie. The woman could have been Claudia Lawrence. The fact that Claudia was seen near the university is supported by further evidence. At around 1 a.m., a witness sees a backpack lying in the grass near the university. It looks very similar to Claudia's. Of course, the witness only learns of Claudia's disappearance later. When she reported it to the police and searched the indicated location, the backpack had already disappeared. On the evening before Claudia's disappearance, March 18th, a suspicious person was recorded near her house. She's walking down the street at 7:15 p.m. It appears to be a man. He first turns a corner, from which he emerges seconds later with a bag. Then he walks back down the street he came from. When another man runs past within sight, he stops briefly, as if he doesn't want to be seen. After a moment, the man continues running toward Claudia's house. This is, as mentioned, the evening before Claudia's disappearance. The next morning, at 5:07 a.m., a person walks down the street whom the police believe they recognize. It could be 56-year-old Richard Cartwright. He lives very close to Claudia. The problem is that before he can be questioned, Richard Cartwright dies of natural causes in April 2009. Richard's friends defend him posthumously. They say he was simply an early riser and a passionate walker. There was nothing unusual about Richard being out on the streets of York shortly after 5 a.m. that morning. A documentary released in 2024 states that Richard was never completely ruled out as a suspect. His family, on the other hand, insisted as early as 2009 that Richard had never even been a suspect in the case. In fact, it is not even certain that the man in the video footage was really Richard. However, the police believe it is possible that the man in the video is Claudia Lawrence's kidnapper and perhaps also her murderer. Claudia's case quickly gains notoriety in the UK. Unfortunately, this is less due to the desperate search for Claudia and more because of her relationships with men. During a TV report on Claudia's disappearance, An interviewer mentions that she had many complex relationships. This is grist to the mill for the tabloid press, and Claudia is described in the tabloid media as a homewrecker, i.e., a woman who destroys existing relationships between two partners. This not only distracts massively from the search for the missing person, but also damages Claudia's image and thus the case. Some reports even imply that Claudia is to blame for her own disappearance because she interfered in personal relationships. This is, of course, a completely inappropriate and unhelpful statement. The search for Claudia continues, and a possible clue is hidden in her car, which is in the repair shop. A cigarette butt is found in it, and it contains unknown male DNA. Although this information is public knowledge, no one who smoked this cigarette in Claudia's car has come forward. So perhaps it belongs to an acquaintance who does not want to be linked to her disappearance. Perhaps it belongs to a potential perpetrator. In any case, the man with whom Claudia may have argued on the bridge on the morning of her disappearance was a smoker. The witness explicitly remembers that he was holding a cigarette in his left hand while arguing with the woman who could have been Claudia. Unfortunately, the man can never be identified. In September 2009, investigators searched the campus of the university where Claudia worked in the cafeteria. They are also looking for the driver of a rusty white van. He's said to have approached several women along Claudia's route to work in the days before her disappearance. However, the driver or the car were never identified. As the police were not making much progress with their search in York, the investigation was expanded. Before her disappearance, Claudia had been on vacation in Cyprus a few times. It is said that she may have received some job offers there. That is not so unlikely. As a cook, she could find employment anywhere. And in a country with an economy based on tourism like Cyprus, there would certainly be many opportunities for Claudia. She made several acquaintances there during her vacations. The last text message she received before her disappearance is said to have come from a man in Cyprus. This friend is said to have commuted between England and Cyprus in his van. This has led to the theory that Claudia could have been smuggled to Cyprus in the van. This would have allowed her to avoid the numerous border controls along the way. The British police are even investigating on the island and questioning Claudia's acquaintances there. But it still seems unlikely that the young woman would have simply left for Cyprus. The friend with the van can be ruled out as a suspect. And why would Claudia leave the country from one day to the next without telling anyone? A few witnesses claim to have seen Claudia in Amsterdam, so the possibility that she was trafficked there is being investigated. But no trace of the missing Englishwoman can be found there. Instead, another theory emerges. A witness is certain that she saw Claudia in 2009 with a man who bears a striking resemblance to Christopher Halliwell, who was later convicted of double murder. Halliwell does have family in Yorkshire, but they live quite a distance from Claudia's place of residence. Christopher Halliwell can never be proven guilty or complicit in Claudia's disappearance. Over the years, there have been several arrests in connection with the case. None of them led to a conviction, but for the sake of completeness, they are mentioned here nonetheless. The first arrest was made in 2014, 5 years after Claudia's disappearance. A 59-year-old colleague of hers was arrested on suspicion of murder. The colleague is said to have gotten along well with Claudia and lived very close by. That's why he occasionally gave her a ride to work in his car while hers was in the shop. Just one day later, however, he was released from custody. The suspicion against him was not substantiated. In the same year, 46-year-old Paul Harris from York is investigated and arrested in a pub called the Ecom. Paul is not accused of Claudia's murder, but of perverting the course of justice in connection with the case. In a criminal case, this could happen, for example, through false statements or by covering up for another person. Parts of the basement of the Ecom pub are even excavated. However, no trace of Claudia is found there. Owner Paul Harris is eventually released. In the years that follow, 4 more men are arrested. However, all of them have to be released due to lack of evidence. In March 2016, an attempt is made to bring murder charges against some of these men. However, the public prosecutor's office cannot approve these charges due to lack of evidence. All that is known about the 4 men is that they were all regulars at the Next Head pub, where Claudia used to go. It is possible that this is where she ultimately met her killer, in a place where she really just wanted to have a good time. The chief detective in charge of the case once said the following about Claudia Lawrence's disappearance. Claudia apparently lived a large part of her life in secret. For a privately educated daughter of a country lawyer, Claudia had some unusual acquaintances. And this remains the only missing person case in which I was warned or threatened. Not just once, but twice. To this day, it is assumed that Claudia was abducted on March 19, 2009, and murdered shortly thereafter. It is believed that she knew the perpetrator and that he may even have been from York. But who could be responsible for the crime remains a mystery. Much of the information was never made public, partly for tactical reasons related to the investigation, and partly for data protection reasons. Now it's your turn. Do you also believe that Claudia knew her killer? Or do you have a completely different scenario in mind? I look forward to reading your comments. By the way, your comments also support the channel. Any interaction, whether a like, comment, or subscription, increases the likelihood that the video will be recommended to people who have not yet subscribed to Insolito. So, thank you in advance. Other than that, there's not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you watch the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao everyone.